Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Lucky Gomez and or Lucrecia Gomez Molina. I am a Molina and thank you for visiting. We are doing chapter 3 today and I'm very excited about sharing this information with you guys. I found some amazing information about one of our ancestors, probably our famous ancestor, um, on Imelda's father's side of the family. We're going to go into a lot of detail about that. But I just wanted to say that we're going to be doing chapter 3 on Julian Raymundo, okay? Um, Riveiro y Jacinto. And he was born in 1854 and he was the Archbishop of Guatemala from I think it was 1914 to 1920. He died in 1931, so he lived a long life, and he was Archbishop of Guatemala. So a lot of the information that I found through Catholic websites. He was uh, honored by the Catholic Church, deeply honored by what he did in his work. So I'll be talking about that. And it's really been quite illuminating, very emotional to find out more about him. I found some things about the family that I didn't know. My mom never told me. Lily never mentioned this. Nobody in the family ever mentioned the things that I found out. So I'm thinking that maybe we just didn't know about this. So it's going to be interesting. I hope you guys like it. So thanks for visiting, and let's move into the Hi everybody. Thanks for visiting. La familia Molina Riveiro, family stories in the oral tradition. And this is Lucky Gomez, and I want to welcome all my family members and friends that are joining us today for this video that we have going here today. And let me see here. Let's see here. You know, that's what happens when you don't number the pages. So, all right, so I'm doing chapter 3, you guys. So, family stories in the oral tradition, and we are going to be talking about Julian Raymundo Riveiro y Jacinto. And as you can see, he's 1854 to 1931. And he was at Santo Domingo, and this is an old image of Santo Domingo here. And I think it's a 1950s image, maybe earlier. But this is where he worked throughout his life as a priest. Now, I have to say that when I started researching him, I became very inspired and very touched by what he did. He is our most famous ancestor, not that far removed from us. He died in 1931, so you know he is a man of the 20th century, at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century here. So he is a modern man who decided to become a priest. He was Archbishop of Guatemala from 1914 to 1920. And he was very devoted to his, life, and devoted to his life as a priest. but he was especially devoted to the rosary ¿cómo le llaman? El rosario de la Virgen, el rosario de la Virgen, the rosary that was prayed to the Virgin Mother. And the whole time that he was in Santo Domingo, he really promoted this faith in the Virgin Mother and praying to her and being devoted to her. He was a big devotee of this, as a matter of fact, and the Catholic Church officially recognizes him for this one important thing that he did. That's what he did. Nobody else was doing that at that time in Guatemala. So he was the one that was doing it, and I just thought it was so cool that he was doing that and devoting his priesthood to the devotion of the Virgin Mary through the prayer of the Rosary. And it kind of started making sense when I started thinking about my mom. Lily was very devoted to the Virgin Mary. Many people in Guatemala are. Obviously, in Mexico, they have their Virgen de Guadalupe. In Guatemala, we have La Virgen de la Asunción. And she was a very strong devotee of the Virgin Mary. And she talked a lot about when she was little, her mother would take her and Grace to visit her sister Helen. What was her name? Her sister's name was, oh man, it wasn't Helen. Her name was, I just forgot it right now. It'll come back. But she had 3 daughters, Helen, Gloria, and Chiqui. They were mom's and Grace's cousins. And they would go to her sister's house and pray. And sometimes they would go to Santo Domingo and pray. And my mom talks about how they used to get really bored. Of course, they were little, and they, how children are. They're like, a bit too active, and they move around and they can't sit still for too long. But it's interesting how, like, she grew up with that influence. It's not really interesting, I mean, I shouldn't be so surprised about it. I think what it is that now I maybe understand it a little bit better, what it really meant to her, and the fact that it's something that her mom taught her. And well, Imelda, this is Imelda's uncle, because he's the brother of her father. So right at the turn of the century, and so I'm talking about the turn of the 19th century into the 20th century, okay? I think that's right. Yeah? No, yeah. Yeah. Because we're now in the 21st century. So anyway, so it was 100 years ago, right? Over 100 years ago, because we're talking about, Imelda as a girl, 1916, 1915, 1914, around there, And she had her uncle, and he was at that time, in the 1916, 1917, he was the Archbishop of Guatemala. And so right around the time that Imelda eventually married Eduardo Papaguayo, officially her uncle married them. He said they weren't married until he married them. So she was married by the Archbishop of Guatemala, who was her uncle. So but I already knew that part of the story, how about him marrying them and all that stuff. But I really had not really understood the influence that this man had on the women in my family. Okay, so because of his devotion to the Rosary, to the Virgin Mary. So that was a kind of cool thing to see. I really liked that. Okay, so let me just go ahead and we're going to get into the slideshow mode. Okay. All right, so here is this amazing photograph of our ancestor, Julian Raymundo. It took me a while to find this image. Eventually, I found it in a Catholic site, and this is the information that it provided. So it has Friar Julian Raymundo Riveiro y Jacinto, 1914 to 1920. Those are the years that he was Archbishop of Guatemala. So this image was found in the Endangered Archives program at the British Library. And it comes from a glass plate negative, which was found in Japan, of all places. It was found in a Japanese photography studio. I'm not really sure how that happened. I don't have any information as to how this plate, this glass plate, ended up in Japan. I could not find any more information about that. I'm not really sure if the plate was eventually donated to the British Library by the church. And I really don't know exactly where this was found. But this image is attached to Julian Raymundo's name and all this information on him and Guatemala, so it has to be the real deal. I think it is. Now, this image, apparently they believe it was created between 1895 and 1915. And he was Archbishop at that time. He became Archbishop in 1914. And, he finished his Archbishop term in 1920. So it falls within the same years. And what else? This website also states, this Catholic website where I found this stuff, also states that the original material is now being held by the Center for Mesoamerican Research, CIRMA, which is in Antigua, and it is in the Guatemalan Photographic Library. And it's part of the collection that is called Portraits of Priests and Catholic Customs, 1895 to 1915. I was very excited when I found this image, and especially when I found this history that you see here. I thought, wow, that is amazing, really incredible. All right, now here's another image of him. I'm not really sure where this image comes from, but I found this image in another site, and apparently the image that we saw a few slides earlier, where it's just of his head, comes from this image. They have apparently, whoever is putting his information on this other genealogy site, they have his photograph, this photograph specifically. So this is a really cool image. He looks a lot younger in this image. So what I've put here is some details about the family tree of our dear ancestor Julian Raymundo. And we're going to start with Imelda. So Imelda Riveiro, okay? Imelda, remember, for those of you who aren't really that familiar with this and it gets a little confusing, Imelda is my grandmother. She is my mother's mother. She's Lily and Grace's mother. Okay? And she was married to Eduardo Papaguayo. We used to call, my mom taught us to call Imelda Mama Meca and her dad Eduardo Papaguayo. So because Julian comes from Imelda's side of the family, that's why we're focusing on her. So Imelda, she was born in 1893, and she's my grandmother and Lily's mom, my mom's mom. Now her parents were Francisco de Sales Riveiro, Imelda's father, okay, and he was born in 1885. And Imelda's mother, her name was Maria Josefa Anastasia Escobar, and she was born in 1860. So interesting, she was 25 years older than Francisco. Now, I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, these are Imelda's parents. So these guys, when Imelda and Eduardo took that vaudeville show through Central America, which we'll be talking more about that, Francisco and Maria Josefa went with them. They were with them. So everybody at that time is young, right? I mean, Imelda marries Eduardo in 1917, 3 years before her uncle, Julian Raymundo, leaves the Archbishop station. Okay, so these are her parents. Now, what we're going to do now is Imelda's grandparents on her father's side. So her father is Francisco de Sales Riveiro. This is her father. So now, his parents, so these would be Imelda's grandparents. We have Jose Francisco Riveiro Sierra. Okay, and so he is Imelda's paternal grandfather, and he was born in 1823. So we're going over exactly 100 years ago. Well, 101 years ago. And then Jose Francisco Riveiro Sierra is married to Mercedes Jacinto, and she is Imelda's paternal grandmother. That is paternal on her father's side, okay, and it's her grandmother on her dad's side. That's why we say paternal. Paternal means on her father's side, okay? And she was born in 1823. They were both born exactly the same year. So what we're focusing on right now is these guys right here, especially Mercedes Jacinto, the mother, because the children will be listed under her name when you look at the family tree. And one of her children is Francisco de Sales Riveiro, or at least that's what we thought. But the fact is that the evidence that I found really shows a completely different story. I don't know if Grace and some other members of the family know this story or not. I did not know this story about Imelda's dad, Francisco de Sales Riveiro. I did not know the story that I found out while researching his mother, Mercedes Jacinto. Okay? Because it turns out that this isn't true. So let's move on to the next one. So this is the family tree site. Okay, and this is the evidence that I found. You know, it's important to look at the dates. You know, Eduardo was born in 1898. Imelda is born in 18, oh gosh, I can't read that. Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Because I need to get my notes. Okay, so, yes, let's see here. Yeah, so she's born in 1893. Yeah. So she's older than Papaguayo. She's 5 years older than he is, right? Looks like it. Yeah, because he's born in 1898. Yeah. Okay, so those are not very far away from where we're at. So these are my grandparents. These are Mario, El Látigo Negro, Rodolfo, Carlos, Freddy, La Gladys, Grace, everybody. That's their parent, at least their father. And for some of them, this is their mother. Not for all of them, because remember, Eduardo was married twice, and we haven't gone into that part of the line yet. But most of you probably know the story already. Some of you might not. We'll be looking at that story later. The thing is that these two guys, right, here are Imelda's parents. We're looking at Imelda's side of the family because that's where Julian is, Julian Raymundo. So here's Francisco de Sales Riveiro and Maria Josefa Anastasia. And then up here are his parents. You see? So this is oops. Oh, so what did I do now? Yikes. Okay, let's get out of here and let's go back to that page. Okay, here we go. There we go. And let's view slideshow. All right. So we're looking at these guys right here. These are Imelda's grandparents, right, on her dad's side. So we have Jose Francisco Riveiro Sierra, who is Francisco de Sales Riveiro's father, right? Imelda's dad. That's her dad. That's his dad. And then here's his wife, Mercedes Jacinto. Now, he's born in 1823 and she's born in 1824. But she dies in 1854. All right. So she's like 24, 34, 44. She's like 30 years old when she dies. Okay. She's really young when she dies. And she has children. Her first child is called, some of these names are a little difficult for me to pronounce, but I think it's Eusebia de los Dolores Riveiro Jacinto, and she's born in 1847. And then Mercedes, that's her first child. And then she has a second child, a boy, and his name is Carlos Riveiro Jacinto, and he's born in 1849. And then the third child that she has is Julian Raymundo Riveiro Jacinto, and he's born in 1854. And we see too that he died in 1931. All right, now she dies in 1854, and he is born in 1854. See, when I saw these dates, I was like, oh, wait a minute, what about these guys? What about Imelda's dad? So he's not her son? No, he's not. She dies in 1854 because in the Catholic Church records that I found, it said, let's see here, Mercedes Jacinto died in 1854. The church record showed that she died while giving birth to Julian Raymundo. This we did not know, at least I didn't know. I didn't know, and my mother, she probably didn't know either because she never ever mentioned this to me. The Archbishop of Guatemala, who is our ancestor, okay, Julian Raymundo, lost his mother while giving birth to him. That could be why he was so dedicated to El Rosario de la Virgen. He dedicated his priesthood time in developing her following among his parishioners at Santo Domingo in Guatemala City. And it'll also explain, like I said earlier, why Imelda and her sister Imelda and her sister Blanca, I remember her name now, were always praying the rosary. And they taught their daughters to do the same. My mom recalls how Grace and Mom, would accompany their mom and pray the rosary, when they were young girls. So this was very important. Another thing, another thing that's important to note is that, so when I found this information in this Catholic website, they also said that that Mercedes had died while giving birth to the Archbishop of Guatemala, and that his father, right? His father, Jose Francisco Rivera Sierra, raised them. Now, if you look at these dates, these people didn't live very long. He lived a long time. But it turns out that two other children, Jose Francisco had two other children. We don't know who the mothers are. We have no idea. And that's why Francisco de Sales Riveiro, he's got this Sales name here. I'm not really sure. So he had a different mother than Julian. He and Julian were half brothers. So Imelda's uncle, who was Archbishop of Guatemala, was half brothers with Francisco because they had different mothers. And that's what this information shows me. Francisco was the baby. He was born in 1885, I mean. Yeah, he was born in 1885. Yeah. So that's, 1885, and he's born in 1854, 64, 74, 30 years after Julian. There's 30 years difference between Julian Raymundo and Francisco, Imelda's father. So you guys, isn't that incredible? I think it's amazing. So I'm wondering, where did the Sales comes from? I don't have any idea. It's another mystery. If anyone has any information about this small detail about Imelda's father, please let us know. I am certainly perplexed by this whole thing, because Mercedes is not his real mother. And this family tree info, this is what it shows. Now, I have to tell you guys that this info here, like Imelda and her husband, and then his parents, and all of this stuff here was already put there by somebody else on their side of the family. Okay? The Riveiro side or the Sierra side, Jacinto side, I'm not sure, because they all have Jacinto. Except, well, he has Jacinto too. Right? Because Mercedes is Jacinto, but he's not her son. But he carries her mother's name, which is very interesting. So I'm not really sure what happened there. Maybe they would know, somebody on this side. If anybody knows any of these people or kind of has a clue, it'd be really cool to share that with us. You can email me the info, and then I'll be happy to share with everybody. So let's see, what else can I say about this mystery that I found here? That's pretty much it. Now, the politics that was happening at this time, that that Julian Raymundo was Archbishop, is an interesting story. The whole time that he was a priest, it talks a little bit. I was reading information about his life as a priest, or where he was, what happened to him, things that he had to do, how he managed to from extreme poverty, because apparently, according to the Catholic Church account that I read, Jose Francisco was really poor, and these three kids were born in extreme poverty. I'm not sure about these guys. They just talk about, the fact that he was with his dad now, and that he grew up in extreme poverty.